Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the GRCV Hoops podcast. My name is Gavin Campbell, and actually it's just me today. Rick and Felix won't be joining me today. Unfortunately, weather is really bad out in Illinois at the moment. But hopefully next week we'll be back at it. But it's just me today, so hopefully you guys enjoy. Just going to be a lot of me talking, giving a bunch of different scenarios, try and bounce things off. And as always, you guys go ahead and give me your thoughts and suggestions in the comments. Let us know your opinions and whatnot. Anyway, we're just going to go ahead and jump on into it. And first topic of the day is really a case for Sixth Man of the Year. Lou Williams has really been putting on a show the past few games for the Los Angeles Clippers. He really seems to be the front runner for that award. I know that early in the year I had mentioned Dwayne Wade, and of course Jamal Crawford is always, his name's always floating around there because he seems to win it just about every single year, even though he's only won it 3 times, and I say only. 3 times is definitely prestigious for someone coming off the bench. But Lou Williams has definitely stepped up his game. So far this season, he's averaging close to 22 points a game, 2.5 rebounds, and almost 5 assists off the bench while shooting over 40% from the three-point line. For me, I mean, Lou Will, when he was with the Raptors and he won the Sixth Man of the Year with that team a few years ago, he just had one of his best seasons to me that I've seen, and we know that he's bounced around the league with 7 or 8 different teams at this point in his career. But that was one of the best seasons that he had up to that point, and I think that he's starting to have another one of those seasons now with the Clippers. He's starting to become the primary scoring option when Blake Griffin isn't out there, when teams start to close down on DeAndre Jordan, and especially with all the injuries that the Clippers have been through so far this year. Pat Beverly is still out. They had injuries to Gallinari and Teodosic. Now that he's back, he's starting to get into the swing of things, occasionally not playing those back-to-back games. But so far he looks good. But getting back to Williams, this definitely reminds me of his Sixth Man of the Year season with Toronto back in 2015. And he could definitely win that award again. I don't think Jamal Crawford is a candidate at this point. I just think that age is finally catching up with him. As long as he's been in the league, I think 18 seasons now. So I don't think that he's going to be a candidate for that. Dwayne Wade, I don't think that his scoring output is gonna get him enough to win this award. Although, I mean, you can really argue that he is a essential piece to that Cleveland second unit. He does run the show there. He's averaging just over 11 points a game, and close to, I think, 5 or 6 assists, 5 or 6 rebounds. But nowhere close to the scoring output that Williams produces for the Clippers. Dwayne Wade, however, does, like I said, bring you that leadership dynamic. Not to say that Williams isn't capable of that, but he is a scorer. And when I say scorer, I mean scorer from all over on the court, three-point line, mid-range. He can get inside. I mean, he really does everything for that bench unit for L.A. And getting back to Dwayne Wade, I just don't think that him scoring less than 12 points a game is going to be able to get him that award, although you could definitely give him some votes if you wanted to give him a nod for that. But no, definitely Lou Williams, front runner for Sixth Man of the Year for me. But getting on to the second topic, let's go ahead and dive into the game that everyone is talking about today, especially with Isaiah Thomas's return yesterday against the Blazers. The Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics face off for round 2. Isaiah Thomas will not play tonight in his return to the city, who traded him for Kyrie Irving. I shouldn't say the city traded him. Danny Ainge traded him, let's be honest. The city loved Isaiah Thomas. We know that he loved the city as well. He loved the fans, everything about it, and some of the things that he was able to do for that franchise in the playoffs during the regular season. And that one night that he had after the death of his sister, which is definitely a tragedy, he played his heart out, and you could tell that every emotion was coming out of him that night, and it was truly something special to see. But getting back to the game tonight, Isaiah Thomas will not be playing. We know that it came down to the wire in Game 1, opening night, when the Celtics traveled to Cleveland to play the Cavs, and that was definitely a nail-biter towards the end of it. The Cavs looked like they were in control for the majority of the game, and then the Celtics started to make their comeback, and it came down to the final shot where Kyrie Irving went one-on-one with LeBron James on the just outside the corner of the three-point line and ended up missing the potential game-tying shot to send it to overtime. That was also the game that Gordon Hayward had that horrific ankle injury, and we know that he will not be a factor in this game, of course. Might not be a factor for the rest of the season, including the playoffs. But I think tonight you should be up for a good matchup. The Celtics play good at home. They're the number one rated defensive efficient team in the league. The Cavs are the second to last worst defensive efficient team in the league, although they are top 5 in offense. The Celtics are top 10 in offense. I just think that this is going to be really good. I think that the Celtics have the edge, obviously because they're at home. The Cavs' shoddy defense has been in question for the past however many weeks. When they went on that winning streak, I think of 14 or 15 games they did have a top 10, top 5 defense for a while, and then they just decided to stop playing. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. I'm not sure if LeBron was like, okay, you guys don't need to play defense anymore, save your energy for later in the season, but whatever the case, I mean, it's a drastic drop-off to where they were during their win streak to where they are now. But tonight, I think you have a good matchup between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics. I think LeBron's going to do his thing. We know that he plays well at the Garden most of the time. I think that Kyrie Irving is going to want to even the score, so look for him to have one of his high 30, maybe low 40-point games tonight. The Boston bench for me, though, is going to have to step up. They are one of the worst, if I'm not mistaken, possibly the worst scoring bench in the entire league. But we know that they've been depleted after trading for Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward to get them under the salary cap. They needed to trade away all those pieces like Jay Crowder, like Avery Bradley. So we knew it was going to be a problem, but being last place in scoring in the league is definitely a problem for your bench unit. Jason Tatum, I expect to step up in this game as long as he's not having to guard LeBron. I think he's going to have a difficult time. I expect the Celtics to stick Jaylen Brown on LeBron James. He's definitely coming into his own and playing better defense as the year goes on. Not an elite defender, obviously. He's a second-year player, but he can get the job done. He's lanky. He's quick laterally, and I think that he will cause LeBron the most problems when you match him up one-on-one. And obviously they're going to need to find an answer for Kevin Love down low. I don't think Al Horford, although he has stepped up his defense and rebounding this year, I think that he's going to have a tough time defending Kevin Love tonight. I expect him to, at very least, get at least 20 points in this game. Probably somewhere between 3 to 5 3-pointers made tonight. LeBron obviously going to do his thing. We know that he is the best, if not top 2 or 3 player in the league right now. He'll do his thing, and the point guard situation, they're going to need to find somebody to guard Kyrie Irving because I don't think the Cavs have an answer for that. I don't think that you put Jay Crowder on Kyrie, although Crowder is more than capable of guarding Irving. I really don't know if the Cavs have an answer for him or not, but they're definitely going to need to figure something out if they want to keep it close. I'm definitely going to go ahead and give the nod to the Celtics on this one. I think they're going to go ahead and even up the score. The Cavs' defense has not been looking well up to, as of late. And, I would not be surprised if the Cavaliers did win. I'm just going to go ahead and give the nod to the Boston Celtics tonight. But speaking of the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers, Isaiah Thomas of the Cleveland Cavaliers made his debut last night against the Portland Trail Blazers. Thomas scored 17 points, dished out 3 assists, while shooting 50% from the floor in just 19 minutes, which was also strange. Let me interject myself for a second, which was strange because his minute restriction was, in one of the articles that I had read, quoted him as playing between 8 and 12 minutes. And playing 19 minutes last night, that was well over double what he should have been playing minimum. So he must have been feeling pretty good, and the Cavs must have been confident in him being out there. But anyway, the Cavs would go on to win that game 127-110. Thoughts on Isaiah's return? He definitely looked like himself out there. I don't think that he looked as quick as he could be. Obviously, he hasn't played a game in many months, so it's going to take time for him to come back into his own and find his rhythm again. We know that his pregame interview, the day before the game, he was quoted as saying, "I'm going to be rusty." He's like, "I'm not going to be myself." But that's with any player and any injury. Obviously, just an example, Paul George, when he had that horrific leg injury playing for Team USA a couple years ago, When he came back, he was only playing 12, 15 minutes a game, and this is just going to take time for him to get back into his rhythm, like he said, and really find it. He said it's going to be something special. This team is going to be something special when he gets to 100%. And after watching it last night, you look at how Isaiah Thomas fits in with the system and LeBron James and the other players on the Cavs. We know that he's not so much a playmaker as he is a scorer, but if LeBron James and him can find the chemistry and, can share the ball efficiently, minimize the turnovers, minimize bad shots, don't try to make it about yourself and play a team game like, basketball is supposed to be played. I think that this could be great for them. I really think that they can compete for a championship and ultimately win the title. But it all comes down to if everything comes together perfectly. I mean, everything has to be perfect for this team to be able to beat a team like the Golden State Warriors, like the Houston Rockets, and even the Boston Celtics for that matter. We saw how close Game 1 was, and I'm picking the Celtics to win tonight. So he was definitely impressive. I think that 17 points on 50% shooting in 19 minutes in your first basketball game, your first professional basketball game that you've played in over half a year, it's definitely impressive. 3 assists I would like to see come up. I know that 19 minutes and 3 assists, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I'm not going to knock him. He was probably just trying to find some of that rhythm last night, trying to get back into his groove. But I expect his assists to come up to at least 5 or 6, hopefully. That they're going to need that if they're going to be successful. Unless Isaiah is shooting over 50% from the field, averaging more than 20 points a game. Otherwise, I think that the Cavs might be in trouble. But other than that, I thought he looked good. I thought he did a great job, and he was definitely impressive. He was definitely impressive, and hopefully moving forward, he can continue to grow back into his former self and build on top of what he's already done and what he did last year with the Celtics. Staying in the Eastern Conference, we have to move on to one of my favorite players. He is my favorite player, DeMar DeRozan. He scored a career-high 52 points on New Year's Day while dropping in 5 three-pointers and shooting a perfect 13 of 13 from the free throw line. The Raptors went on to defeat the Milwaukee Bucks 131-127. DeMar DeRozan also broke the record for most points scored in a Raptors uniform in a single game, passing the great Vince Carter and Terrence Ross, who previously held the record at 51. The question that I had down here was, is DeRozan the greatest Raptor of all time? I know a lot of people, including myself, hold Vince Carter to a very, very high standard, even though he only played 6 seasons for the team. DeMar has played 8 seasons, going into his 9th this year. He is the Raptors' all-time leading scorer, and he holds the record now for the most points scored in a single game for the Toronto Raptors. So, I mean, Vince, as a complete player, let me say, because Vince Carter is a Hall of Famer. He will go to the Hall of Fame. He is one of the greatest players this league has ever seen. Obviously, hands down, the greatest dunker I've ever seen, and I think a lot of people would back that up. But DeMar, as a whole player, he's definitely number one in my book. He's got to be at the top of the list for many people. This record was just another accolade that he can add to his resume. He is a 3-time, going to be 4-time All-Star this year. I mean, Vince Carter, obviously multi-time All-Star, slam dunk champion, but he never reached the Eastern Conference Finals. DeMar DeRozan did that 2 years ago with his squad that they have right now. Him and Kyle Lowry and Valanciunas and Norman Powell, Terrence Ross, those guys. They got the team there. They weren't able to make it there last year because they ran into LeBron James a little bit early, but that's kind of what happens when you have to play against the best player on the planet year after year in the playoffs. This year, I don't know. Me being a Toronto Raptors fan, if there's any other Raptors fans out there, I don't know if you've thought about this, but I see the Raptors as a legitimate contender this year. And I'm not saying that because the fanboy in me wants them to be. I legitimately think this. And the reason why is the team just seems different. It definitely seems different to me. First of all, just let me give some statistics out there for people. The Raptors are top 10 in defensive efficiency and also top 10 in assists per game. Not to mention that they have a top 5 defense at number 4 out of the entire league up to this point. Usually when you're top 10 in offense and defense and then top 10 in assists per game, that is a combination that can get you to the finals, usually. The only problem that I have is that LeBron James is still playing basketball, and he is perhaps playing some of the best basketball of his career right now. So for me, other than LeBron, I do think the Raptors can beat the Celtics. I think that is very real. That is very legitimate argument to be made. Now, if they do make the conference finals and they do play the Cavs, I would not be surprised if this series went 6 or 7 games and the Raptors came out on top. I know to some people it sounds nuts. It's like, oh, the Raptors, they can't beat the Cavs. They can't beat LeBron. They're too good. You know, Isaiah Thomas, Kevin Love, and obviously LBJ, J.R. Smith, Kyle Korver, all those guys on that roster, right? But hear me out, okay? They acquired Serge Ibaka last year in hopes that he would bring some defense to that team, that he could bring some versatility to that team, you know. And he did, but he only had a couple months to be able to gel with that squad. And now that he's had the entire offseason and he's had the past few months of this season to get even more prepared, you know, to hone his skills even farther than what they were, and be able to develop chemistry with Lowry, with JV, with DeRozan, with Norm Powell, with the other guys on the roster. You know, OG Anunoby has been a great rookie and a great piece for them at the 3 spot. Jakob Poeltl has definitely come in to his own and helped them on the glass and inside with his scoring. And then C.J. Miles, of course, that we acquired from the Pacers in that trade with Corey Joseph. I mean, this squad is just it's a deep team, and obviously I can't forget about DeLon Wright. He wasn't with us for a little bit due to injury, but he's back now. I mean, all these names, these are guys that contribute night in and night out. Okay, Pascal Siakam, of course, I can't leave him out either. He's had some big nights this year. All of these guys have contributed in their own way, and they have gotten them to the 2nd seed in the East right now, sitting 2 games behind Boston. You know, sitting a game ahead of Cleveland right now. I just think that this team, you know, people always tell me, it's like, yes, they'll do good in the regular season. They'll win 50-something games. They'll get to the playoffs, and then DeMar and Lowry, they go cold. You know, they're not clutch. They start missing shots. They get nervous. You know, you can see it in their faces on the court. But to me, you know, as much failure as they have had in the playoffs, you know, they've been there twice now. You know, making somewhat of a run. You know, they get to the 2nd round. They get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think the 3rd time around, you know what they say, 3rd time's a charm. I think they get there. They say, you know what, we've been here before. Let's just play our game. Let's play. Let's adapt. Let's overcome, and we can do this. And like I said, them being there before, I think really helps. I think them having a seasoned veteran like Serge Ibaka this year, you know, having DeMar and Lowry, who have been there before twice now, 3 times for DeRozan back when they lost to the Nets in the first round about 4 years ago, I believe. I just think that this time they've had enough experience. You know, they obviously have the skills to do so. I think DeMar DeRozan could finish. Now, call me crazy. I think he could finish in top 5 in MVP voting this year, and I'm very serious about that. But I just think this is a team that has enough contribution, enough star power, especially if JV can play defense. When he plays defense, when he can actually block shots and hold down the paint like the anchor he's supposed to be, the Raptors are hard to beat. They're very hard to beat because you know they're going to score. That's why they're 4th in offensive efficiency this year. That's why that they're top 10 in assists this year. And the reason that they've been able to, you know, propel themselves from being a top 15 team in defense to a top 10 team in defense is the acquisition of Serge Ibaka, as well as OG Anunoby. He has been great on the defensive end of the floor this year, especially for a rookie. He's done an outstanding job. And all I'm going to say is don't sleep on the Toronto Raptors this year in the playoffs. I expect them to at least make it interesting, and I promise you that. But moving on from them, I got a little excited. That's my favorite team for those of you that didn't know. I'm a huge Toronto Raptors fan, but I try to keep it, you know, realistic. Let's just keep it that way. And I'm very serious. Everything that I said, I'm very serious about. Don't sleep on the Raptors this year. But let's move on to the other conference. Enough with the East for now. Let's go ahead and move over to the West and talk about the Houston Rockets. James Harden suffered a grade 2 hamstring strain in his game against the Los Angeles Lakers. He's going to be out a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. We know that James Harden, when Chris Paul was out, he could handle his own with the team. They went on that a pretty good win streak there. They only lost 2 or 3 games, I believe, in his absence. But now that Chris Paul doesn't have James Harden, how is he going to handle that the next 2 to 3 weeks, the next 6 to 10 games that Harden's going to be gone? Should they be worried? Should Chris be worried? Should Mike D'Antoni be worried? I don't think so. I think Chris is seasoned enough to understand what he needs to do to win games. When he was with Harden, really Harden just becomes a sniper from the outside, just like Ariza, Anderson, the rest, Gordon, obviously, and those guys. When Chris Paul is in the game, but I think without Harden, it's going to be a little bit of a transition, but I don't think it's anything that he's not used to. You know what I mean? Chris, when he was in Los Angeles or when he was in New Orleans, he had players that he would always dish the ball off to. He had shooters like J.R. Smith, or he had David West, or he had DeAndre Jordan. Obviously not a shooter, but Lob City, that was a thing. Him and Blake Griffin. They also had J.J. Redick. When Eric Gordon was there for a short period, he had him to throw it to. And now he's back with Eric Gordon, so I'm sure there's still some chemistry there. I think that the Rockets, their motive is to shoot as many threes as possible and then get back on defense. I mean, that's the Mike D'Antoni thought process, and I think with Harden gone, that obviously hurts their chances because he's a great 3-point shooter and he can attack the lane like nobody else. But with Chris Paul there, he'll find the open man. You have to pay attention to Chris Paul because he can still shoot. I mean, he's not looking to score first. He's obviously a playmaker. He's a floor general. He looks for the open man first. But if you leave him open, he will not hesitate to take the shot. So you're still going to have to account for him. I haven't looked at the Rockets' schedule so far in the next 10 games or so, but I don't think they should be worried. They might slip in the standings a little bit, but I think they'll hang on to that second seed. The Warriors may gain a game or two on them with Harden's absence, but I don't think this will be a problem for Chris Paul and the Rockets whatsoever. Now, to compare a Western Conference team to a Eastern Conference team, real quick, I thought this was interesting after watching so many Bulls games this year. Their team is really coming together. Chris Dunn is playing well. Mirotic is playing well. Marketing, Portis, Valentine. I mean, the team's really coming together and in what no one thought would really be anything until Zach LaVine got back to his usual self coming off that ACL injury. But comparing the Chicago Bulls to the Sacramento Kings, they have De'Aaron Fox, they have Frank Mason, they have Willie Cauley-Stein and Buddy Hield, and Harry Giles, who hasn't even played yet. He'll be back in February. But to just look at these two teams and to see who would have the brighter future going forward, and you can make the argument for either side. I know for me, one aspect of it is the Bulls are in the East, the Kings are in the West. Obviously, the Bulls have the better chance of having a brighter future because of the competition, right? All the stars are in the Western Conference. However, having that said, I do think that the Kings have potential for having a great team, definitely a playoff team in the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, they could definitely have something along the lines of what the Timberwolves are doing right now after they acquired Jimmy Butler. They had a young team. They couldn't get over the hump, and then they signed that all-star player to finally propel them into the playoffs, and they're at the number 4 seed right now. We know that Karl Anthony Towns has been in the league for 3 years. Andrew Wiggins has been in the league for 4 years now. So, I mean, you just look at the accumulation of young talent that they have, both teams respectively, and you see good things in the future. You see Chris Dunn coming into a true point guard, a true scoring point guard. Let me rephrase that. But nonetheless, and he plays gritty defense. I know his stats might not say it, but I've seen it. I've watched him enough this year. And then Mirotic, I don't know where this came from because earlier in the year I was saying that you need to get rid of him now. He's not really doing anything for your team. He's not doing anything for the locker room. He's not producing. But he proved me wrong, and I have nothing wrong with saying that. He's balling out right now. And then Lauri Markkanen, he had a hell of a game, whether it was about a week ago, I believe. He went off for 30 points, something like that. I know that I didn't catch the game, but I did watch the highlights, and he looks like a young Dirk. I mean, he looks like he's going to really be a player in this league Definitely one of the better stretch fours in this league if he can keep it up. He looks like he can really grow into a promising prospect. But then, you got to say something about the Kings. Willie Cauley-Stein's coming in to be a great big man. Definitely in the pick and roll game, he's excellent. From what I've watched this year, Buddy Hield, definitely not the 3-point specialist that we thought he was going to be, but his shooting and his form and his production really is just getting better and better the more I watch him, and I expect him to keep getting better in the years to come. I think Frank Mason is slept on. Frank Mason III, he comes off the bench for the Kings. I think him and De'Aaron Fox could be a great 1-2 combo. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox starting and then having Frank Mason come in off the bench. I think that could be a great 1-2 punch. And then when Harry Giles gets back, Harry Giles, however you say it, you know who I'm talking about. When he comes back, from what I saw of him, his highlight tape, this guy he is athletic freak. I mean, he can jump out the gym, and he is definitely going to be a factor for this Kings team, especially with De'Aaron Fox being a playmaker, and like I said, Frank Mason, he can be a playmaker. I think having him and then Buddy Hield on the wing, and also Garrett Temple. Don't forget about him. He's been playing really well this year. He's had a handful of good games so far this season, and he could definitely. I think he will be a piece for the Kings team moving forward. I think when you just boil it down to, I mean, both teams have great pieces when you really get down to it, but ultimately, I think the Bulls being in the Eastern Conference is going to make it easier for them to win games sooner. Have their talent develop sooner because of the level of competition is lesser than that of the West. Not to say that the Kings won't have a great season going forward, or great seasons, going forward, but that's just my take on it. But let me get back to another Western Conference team, the New Orleans Pelicans. Something I see floating around in the interwebs is, should the Pels trade DeMarcus Cousins? Should they get rid of him instead of him walking in the summer this year? I don't see him re-signing if the Pelicans don't make like the playoffs as a 5 or 6 seed. Which, don't get me wrong, it's plausible. It's not very likely to me. I think that they could definitely get the 8 seed, but to say that they'll get a 5 or a 6 seed and then actually win a first round series, I just don't think it's there. Don't get me wrong, but I don't see it happening as much as I want it to happen. I love the idea, and I love watching it absolutely, of Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins playing together, especially with Rajon Rondo. That is just fun to watch. I mean, the Pelicans are a fun team to watch, but they play in the West. This is a problem of it being such a stacked conference. If they were, let's say, in the East, I mean, they would already probably have the 6 seed. They might be a 4 seed for all we know. I mean, they could be that good if they played in the Eastern Conference. But I think for the Pelicans, don't let Boogie walk. Okay, we know that the Pacers already did this with Paul George. He said he was done. I mean, Boogie hasn't said that he's done with New Orleans, obviously, but they got rid of Paul George to the Thunder because he said he was leaving. Okay, you don't want to have this be a Kevin Durant situation where you hope that he re-signs with Russell Westbrook in the summer and then he ends up walking. Okay, you don't want to have that happen. You don't want to get screwed and be left with nothing but Anthony Davis again. Okay, not that they don't have competent players. We've talked about the New Orleans Pelicans before, right? They have, obviously, Drew Holiday is a great point guard. They have Rajon Rondo, great backup point guard. Etuan Moore is okay. He's okay. He shoots the ball from outside decently enough. And then, other guys like Solomon Hill, who's injured right now, but he's a decent player. Okay, the Pelicans are a decent team. They just don't have enough perimeter shooting around them to complement their big men the way that they're supposed to. I think that they really missed an opportunity this summer to go get a J.J. Redick, who's on the Sixers right now, to go get another perimeter shooter that could really help them, could really complement their game. I just really think that they need to get rid of Boogie while they can, unless they turn it around in the next few weeks. There's about 5 weeks before the All-Star break, and if they can figure out how to turn it around before then, go ahead and keep them. And if you're for sure, 85, 90% sure you're going to make the playoffs, go ahead and keep them. Try to make a run, But other than that, I really think you should trade them. I think the Cavs would be a nice option to try to package that with maybe Tristan Thompson and the Brooklyn pick for Boogie Cousins. And could you imagine that? Having Kevin Love move back to his 4 spot, have Boogie start at the 5, and then LeBron along with JR and Isaiah Thomas, that's a dangerously scary lineup. That's dangerous. That's almost mean. That's a mean lineup right there. I just think that would be a plausible thing. I mean, Tristan Thompson in the Brooklyn pick, I mean, that would give, the Pelicans a top 10 pick this year, and then their pick as well. I mean, they could either trade those off for another player, but I wouldn't do that. I would go ahead and grab your two young guys. You have Anthony Davis under contract for the next 3 years and try to get something going, maybe sign somebody in free agency and move forward from there. But call me crazy. I think that they should trade him. A few other people think they should trade him. There's a lot of people that say they should trade Anthony Davis. I don't think they should trade Anthony Davis. He's the one under contract. You need to bring in revenue. Even if you're not going to have success in the playoffs, you have to keep him. Not to mention that he loves the city of New Orleans. He said he wants to try and win in New Orleans, so go ahead and keep him. There's nothing wrong. Have AD stay, have the Brow stay, and then go ahead and trade off Boogie. And, your experiment didn't work. Go ahead and try to figure it out from there. But speaking of Boogie Cousins, who's probably going to make the All-Star game this year, and speaking of the All-Star game in general, this was a question that I was thinking about the other day because we know Kawhi came back, I believe, towards the end of the second week of December, I believe. Or maybe it was the third week in December. I can't remember. But he came back, and he hasn't really played up to par. We know that he's getting back into it, and this goes along with Isaiah Thomas. You got to get back into the swing of things. You got to find your rhythm. You got to learn to play basketball again. Play with professionally anyway. Obviously, he knows how to play basketball. But should Kawhi Leonard or Isaiah Thomas get an All-Star nod? Should they get votes? I mean, obviously they should get votes, but I mean, should they actually make the game? I believe there's only 12 or 13 spots on the All-Star team. Should they get one? Kawhi has missed over 2 months of the season. So should he get one? He's averaging 15 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 2 assists. This doesn't look like a Defensive Player of the Year, a Finals MVP kind of player. He's been back for 3 weeks now. If he can bring up these averages, if he can get back to 20 points a game, maybe 6 rebounds and 3 or 4 assists, I think, yeah, go ahead and give him the All-Star nod. But as of right now, I don't think you can give that to him. Like I said, he's still getting back into the swing of things, but I mean, you can't just give somebody an All-Star spot because it's like, oh yeah, they're really good. They were really good last year or the year before that. No, you can't. It's like the Kobe Bryant situation when they voted him in. He had no right to be in the All-Star game. Although we do love Kobe. Not everybody. Most people love Kobe Bryant, and that's why he got in. But having said that, I don't think Kawhi Leonard should get an All-Star nod this year, and same goes with Isaiah Thomas. Unless Isaiah Thomas can, I've only seen him play in one game. I know it's a little early to talk about him, but if he can average over 20 points, 4 or 5 assists, and then a couple rebounds, I think that you can go ahead and slide him a nod if you really want. I mean, the East is wide open. I definitely, we'll just go ahead and get on into it. I mean, I had made a list for starting 5 for each conference. And we'll go ahead and debate that a little bit. For my 5 for the East, I had now obviously a little homerism going in here because a lot of people have Kyrie Irving for the point guard in the East, but I picked Kyle Lowry. I know that Kyrie scores about 9 more points a game than Kyle does, but Kyle also gets twice as many rebounds, and he averages more assists. So I went ahead and gave him the nod at the point guard position. Obviously, I'm going to take DeMar DeRozan. He's averaging 25, 4, and 5 this year. Actually, almost 25 points a game this year. He's playing great, almost as good as a couple years ago when he set a career high for points averaged in a season. And then obviously the king, LeBron James, you got to give him a vote. He's arguably playing the best basketball of his career. And then Giannis Antetokounmpo, I just love saying his name, the Greek freak, the freak of Greek. I also gave him a nod at the 4 spot because, I mean, he is what he is. He's a freak. He's putting up great numbers this year. The Bucks, I think, are sitting at the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference as of right now. They're going to be a playoff team, and it's mostly because of that man right there. So he went ahead and got my nod. And then for my center for the East, I have Andre Drummond. This guy's averaging over 14 points and almost 16 rebounds a game. Yeah, 16 rebounds. This guy is a glass-eating machine, okay? I know a lot of people, it's like, oh, why do we have centers in the All-Star game? They're not really that fun. You have the exception of Shaq or Dwight Howard or something like that. But Andre Drummond averaging almost 16 rebounds a game, and the Pistons are sitting at the 4 spot in the Eastern Conference, the 4 seed. This is a team that I didn't even have as one of the top 8 teams in the Eastern Conference. I definitely slept on them, and Andre Drummond's proven me wrong as well. So he's definitely getting a nod from me, and I'm going to go ahead and put some respect on that man right there. But moving over to the Western Conference, I have Russell Westbrook. I was debated, Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook. Who do I want there? Russell Westbrook is just, the numbers are there for me. I have to go ahead and give him the nod. I know Steph's team is winning, but that's an argument for a whole nother day because his team is clearly better than the Thunder, built-wise, and the chemistry is there as well. But Russell Westbrook goes ahead and gets my point guard spot for that team. Shooting guard, I have James Harden, probably going to win MVP this year if he can keep it up. If not, it's probably going to go to LeBron. I have him or LeBron winning MVP this year. But you guys know that. We've talked about it here on the show before. But no, James Harden, not really anything else to say other than I hope he gets healthy soon and that he can get back on the court. At the 3 spot, I have Kevin Durant. He's built on his defensive game this year so much that, he's really turned. He's an MVP candidate. I have to put it out there. He's an MVP candidate as well. With his scoring and his ability to play defense this year has really been something else. We've never seen this from Durant before at any other point in his career. We knew that he was capable, but he never performed this well on the defensive end of the floor up until this year. So that's outstanding for him. He's having a great season. And then I have the Twin Towers of New Orleans at the 4 and 5 spot. Anthony Davis, the Brow, and DeMarcus Boogie Cousins at the 5 spot. These guys are both having incredible seasons. DeMarcus Cousins having an MVP season. I'm telling you, there's a lot of guys that could definitely be MVP candidates. And if the Pelicans could just, if they could just put together being able to win games, being able to keep it together, I should say, they could definitely be in the 4 or 5 spot as of right now. They've lost a lot of close games, I think, decided by 6 points or less. They've lost a lot of those games. If they were, 5 or 6 games above 500, then DeMarcus Cousins, I think you could consider as a real MVP candidate. But I'm going to go ahead and take those guys for the 4 and 5 spot. We're interested to hear who you guys have and who you voted for in the All-Star game. So go ahead and let us know. Leave us some comments on Twitter and Facebook. And as always, you're appreciated, and we appreciate you. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Sorry this was a little bit of a shorter episode. I'm flying solo today, but I hope you guys enjoyed the soothing sound of my voice and the comment that I brought here today. And if you do, go ahead and keep following us on that social media, Facebook and Twitter, and go ahead and hit us up on iTunes if you want to listen to any more episodes. But that's going to do it today. My name is Gavin Campbell. This is the GRCV Hoops Podcast, and we hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next week.